welcome to the One Life Church devotional series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Psalm 136 is unique in that it repeats the same phrase endlessly after every single sentence. His love endures forever. So it says things like, give thanks to the Lord, His love endures to ever. To Him who alone does great wonders, His love endures to forever. And it just keeps repeating it because this is how the song was meant to be sung. The priests say the phrase and then the people reply, God's love endures forever. The big idea in this song is that no matter what you are facing, whether it's triumph or whether it's problems, the Lord's love endures forever. And this is the way it happened right the way through Israel's history. We know that at the opening of Solomon's temple, they sang like this. At the opening of Ezra's temple, they sang like this. The priests in the day of David sang like this. There are countless scriptures that repeat this refrain. The love of the Lord endures forever. We know that He is just, that He is a judge, that He is powerful. But it's His love that He underlines today, and He wants you to know it. His love for you endures forever, even when you do bad things, forever. Even when you grow old, forever. Even when you go beyond the grave, forever. His love endures forever.
Now, in Hebrews chapter 5, Jesus is described as a high priest. This is what it says. Every high priest is selected from among the people, and he offers gifts and sacrifices for sins. But he is able to deal gently with people because he himself knows he's a sinner, and so he's subject to weakness, and that's why he himself offers sacrifices for himself as well as for everybody else. And then he goes on to say, and no priest puts that upon himself. He's called by God. So for example, Aaron was picked by God. And he says, in the same way, Jesus was chosen by the Father to fill this role as the great high priest. And it says, so he was called priest for forever in the order of Melchizedek. Remember, we've spoken about Melchizedek. He was a type of Jesus because there's no record of his mom and dad. He was a king as well as being a priest. And so it was a great picture of Jesus. But it says here in verse 7, during the days of Jesus' life on earth, he offered up prayers and petitions and fervent cries. In other words, he behaved like a priest. And then there's a very tricky verse in verse 8. It says, son though he was, talking about Jesus, he learned obedience from what he suffered. Now you might say, well, how did Jesus learn anything? I mean, he's God, he's omniscient, he's all-knowing. That word learned is in the original language means experiences. So he experiences obedience. He submitted himself to human form and he lived it out on earth as an obedient son. And then verse 9 is even trickier. It says, once he was made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation. I think, well, I thought Jesus was always perfect. Well, that word perfect in the original means completion. So in other words, let's read it again with that in mind. So once this was brought to completion, what? His priestly function. That's what we've been talking about, Jesus as the high priest. So once he had offered sacrifice, once he had been crucified on the cross, he had fulfilled the law, he had completed what needed to be done by the priest. He became the source of eternal salvation. And then he says, I've got a lot more to say to you about this. But he says, but you're slow to understand. In fact, you're behaving like children. And then he says this, by this time you ought to be teachers. But someone needs to teach you the elemental truths of God's word all over again. You need milk. Milk is the food for babies, isn't it? Although it's pretty cool for us, but it's food for babies. And he's saying, listen, you need solid food, man. And he says, if you're walking with God, solid food is for the mature. Verse 14 says, who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good and evil. What you've got to do with food is you've got to chew it, you've got to mix it over your mouth and then digest it and your body makes use of it. Whereas milk, you just suck it in. And so he's basically saying the mature believer's got to chew through things. He's got to wrestle through things. What does it mean, Jesus being made man? What does it mean, him being the high priest? Wrestle through that, chew that, receive that. Don't just suck it in. And so I trust as you go through this, God helps you chew through and gives you insight into what this means for you.